I give it over to John to call us to order.
Okay, well, we call the meeting to order, and you get the next slide. And the one after that. Okay, the first agenda item is public comments. Are there any public comments? Any public comments? And any public comments going 3 times? So, all right. The next item is approval of the June 7th, 2023 minutes, meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I have my motion.
And second?
I'll second.
Okay, the motion made and seconded to approve the meeting minutes of June 7th. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, the ayes have it. So, and this, now we come to the feature entertainment of the afternoon, which is Eric's presentation of the targets and budget midterm. Eric, take it away.
Thanks, John. So here we are at halfway through the year, and we typically take this opportunity to update our targets, just kind of seeing how everything is progressing throughout the year. So we come to you for an update of those targets. So overall, we're actually overall as an organization, we're raising our targets from about 1,200 projects up to 1,359 for the year. We're decreasing our investment from about 98 million to 57 million, and decreasing our capacity installed from 52 million to 22.8. And I'll walk through that programmatically over the next couple of slides where what's driving those changes.
So Eric, you'll give an explanation as to why more projects equals half the megawatts?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. The short version of more projects to half the megawatts is where these changes are occurring. That we're really expecting growth in Smart E, and especially non-solar Smart E, where we don't have a capacity target associated with those projects. We still maintain a very small capacity target for Smart E, which I don't believe we're adjusting. If we are, it's a very nominal amount. So we're increasing projects, but we're expecting them to be predominantly on the home energy efficiency side. So I'll speak more to that as we get there.
Sure, thank you.
So starting with our financing programs line, we're decreasing the number of projects by about 6 to 509 projects. We're attracting investment of 53.5 million, down from 58.9, to deploy at least 4.7 megawatts of clean energy. And this has to do with really where we're seeing activity and where we see pipeline. I think that our original targets, our targets are changing in the PPA predominantly here. And we really are seeing we're still seeing activity there, but we're not seeing as much activity as we had originally forecast. I think there was some overexcitement that we would start to see some of the money from the Inflation Reduction Act start to trickle in and start to stimulate some projects here. That money hasn't started to flow yet, so we are not as bullish on those targets, hence the decrease on the number of projects, capital, and capacity installed. The reason that the number of projects is not coming down proportionately is we are seeing a very robust CPACE pipeline, but we don't have a capacity target for CPACE, which was intentional because we're not trying to show preference for efficiency versus solar there. So I do expect us to achieve and surpass that 4.7 megawatt target because I'm expecting some stuff to come in terms of sea-based and solar and cross that finish line. But we're just winding it down based off of the decreasing number of projects in the PPA. So we're still expect to have a good year. It's just not as good as we had hoped, and that growth we do expect to happen the second half of this year in next fiscal year. We are, in terms of CPACE, I will note, we do some sub-targets as an organization of what projects that we originate versus projects that happen with other developers. And we are very close to our portion of the target. The other developers have really slowed, but we feel that we can pick up their slack and still meet the overall programmatic target for the year. Any other questions here on?
Eric, actually, I do have just one or two questions, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
One is just about the impact of inflation and what's going on from an economy perspective. Do you think that's had an effect of, depressing the number of projects in terms of, especially CPACE, where, maybe a business, C&I is more impacted, let's say, from inflation perspective? That's one. Two, the presidential election cycle, I've read a number of reports where if the presidency changes come January of 2025, there are some reports that state the IRA flow of funds may come to a halt or may massively decrease. I was just wondering, of those two, how does that affect your projections? Will you revise these in the next 1 or 2 quarters, or do these take both of those into account?
So great question. So these forecasts and these targets are just for this fiscal year, so they're just through the end of June. So thankfully, I don't have to answer your question fully on that one. I do. So your first point around just overall inflation and I don't think we still see a robust pipeline, and we've had a very successful year to date with CPACE. There've been there's some portions on the PPA that have run a little bit more slowly, but I don't tend to think that that's really inflation linked. I think that's more just indicative of people sitting on the sidelines or like not even people sitting on the sidelines. I think that's more just other external factors, especially with the segment of the PPA market that we're focused on. There have been a couple of hiccups there that I know we'll navigate through. There have been our partners that bring us projects are still bringing us projects. So I'm long-term excited about that. In terms of the Inflation Reduction Act and a potential change in the White House come January 2025, obviously all these targets are for before then, but I remain hopeful because I think that if you read the original legislation of the Inflation Reduction Act, funds need to be out the door by this fall. So ideally, those funds will start to flow. If there is a change in leadership party-wise at EPA, I would expect there would be a different lens on the oversight of those funds. But we would still have our portion, and we would still be dedicated to getting them out the door and to leveraging them in ways that we've shown that we can.
So just one follow-up. Thank you for that. Yeah, and the way I read the legislation zooming out was they wanted to make sure all the funds flowed prior to any changeover for various reasons, as you can imagine. So the only one last follow-up we could continue, I don't want to hold this up, but only because it's important, is there's going to be a scale up then, because a lot of the flow of funds have been a trickle, but there may be a higher ramp up now. Do we have the team in place? Do we have the process in place to make sure that we can handle that ramp up, that quick ramp up, and there should be no obstacles internally?
The short answer is we're in progress. So we have to meet the targets that we've set out for this year. Yes, to get funds out the door. Bert and his team are hard at work making sure that we're able to get out the door what we've committed as various parts of the various applications within the first year. I know that in at least one of those applications, there's some incentives to getting money out the door the first year as it turns into your balance sheet money as opposed to you borrowing at a low cost loan. So I think that should we be a winner of any or all of the competitions in some way, shape, or form, we will, no matter what we do, it's still going to be an all hands on deck. Let's get this money out the door. But we're prepared to act and prepared to get as much of that out the door as quickly as possible. I think a lot of the uses of these funds are not going to happen overnight. So we're looking at playing in areas where we haven't with some of this money, and it's going to be much more intentional. But those are in different competitions where we're going to have a much longer lead time, like the Solar for All, where we're focused on low to moderate income and affordable housing, which we know is a slow market. I believe the draw time on those funds is either 6 or 7 years. So yeah, we know that we need to scale up. We're scaling up to scale up, or we've set the foundations for what we need to do without overcommitting ourselves in the case that something were to change. So
that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
And to your point, we are constantly meeting and working on our strategy to get money out the door as quickly as possible. We would expect there to be some sort of notification in March as to which the competitions are proceeding, and we would be able to start spending some funds there. So we're honing our plans on how to best get that money out the door. So.
Yeah, and sorry, I just have one more. Apologies, everyone. Just one more on the GGRF, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. We're a finalist. That was great news that we saw that. But because Green Bank has been designated essentially as a New England regional administrator, I guess essentially, I'm just wondering, can you address that from a scale perspective? What will that have an impact on the team in terms of funds getting out the door? Are we going to have to slice off a portion of all Green Bank team members' time to work on GGRF administration versus your normal BAU? Can you just opine on that for a moment?
I don't think so. I think we would have somebody who's kind of our GGRF point person, not necessarily in terms of getting money out the door, but in terms of managing compliance and kind of overseeing and coordinating. And it will really be their role to work with the others in New England to make sure that funds are transferred, that compliance is being met, and that everybody's working regionally towards these approved goals and towards that award.
Okay. All right. So there'll be a point person. So there shouldn't be a significant impact.
Yeah. I mean, aside from one person and some of their oversight, I don't expect staff to be spending time on stuff outside of Connecticut from a reasonable perspective. So,
okay. All right. Thanks. I have no further questions on this section. Thanks, John. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Eric.
So,
Eric, I had one question, which is and I'm assuming when we applied for this money, we applied in terms of specific projects we wanted to do, right? It's not just money coming in that we then figure out what to do with.
Yes, we have various areas. So it's not like I can say, hey, this is the building that we want to retrofit, but we have
I see.
estimates
Okay.
on, hey, we want to do this within the agricultural space. We want to address X number of units in terms of low to moderate income housing for solar. We're looking at Y number of commercial buildings that we're going to fund CPACE with, that type of stuff.
And then, but we have some sort of list, right, of what we think we want
Yes.
to do, right? Okay,
Yes.
right, thanks.
This is the point where I reassure you, there is a plan.
Yeah, no, I believe it. And I'm a big believer, if it looks like a plan, then you're all set anyways.
And as we've demonstrated as an organization, our plans work until they don't, and then we pivot and adjust. And that's our function as an organization. And I think speaks to our strengths. So moving on from the financing program segment, oops, somehow I skipped. I am missing a slide here.
Eric, I do realize, my apologies, everyone. I do realize, I don't think, and John, correct me if I'm wrong if you heard it and I missed it, but I don't think we've properly addressed why we reduced by 5 million, and that essentially cut our energy output from 8.2 megawatts to 4.7. I don't recall hearing the reason.
So that's all within the PPA and just what we think is going to get across the finish line. There's been a little bit of a hold on some of the state projects and some holdups with the Attorney General's office. So some of the projects that we expected to cross the finish line this year are not going to. The legal side needs to get cleared up. And we also have not seen the activity from third-party developers that we had expected. We've still seen some, so it's just we haven't been their chosen offtake point, which means that the private sector, we still see deals getting done. We still see the ZREC auctions with a good amount of competition, but so we're confident in the private market is handling those, but they just haven't come our way. Sorry, I actually skipped the slide that I was looking for, so excuse me, I'll go back.
Thanks.
Sorry, any other questions on financing programs before I?
No.
So pivoting back to our incentive programs, we are cutting our target. Our overall targets here are going to go up, but there are some numbers that are going down as well. So we're going to increase our projects to 1,359 from 1,211. We're going to attract $57 million of investment down from 98.9. And we're cutting our capacity targets from 52 million to 22.8. There are two big drivers here. The first I'll speak about is the positive, which is on SmartE. We're expecting an overall, and I say this very cautiously, because I'll give you an update on a couple other things that make me cautious, but we're expecting an overall increase in projects for the program. We had originally estimated it at about 944. We're going up to 1,200 or about 1,100, 1,200 and change. The driver in that is we hadn't fully taken into account all of the new incentives that are going to be coming out from the IRA and their impact in the market, and really where we were. I think we lowballed, and we knew we lowballed the original targets, so we're increasing those. In revising these, I'd originally wanted to go higher, but unfortunately, and when I put these together the week before Christmas, and not the week before Christmas, 2 weeks before Christmas, I was shooting much higher than this. I was very, very bullish. And then the week before Christmas, we were noticed by one of our contractors that they had been informed by Capital for Change that they were pausing their participation in the program. Capital, because they were out of money. Capital for Change handles 60% of our Smarty loan volume. So that gave us a little bit of a pause and a bit of an inflection point. So we scaled back these numbers a little bit from our more bullish view. I still think that we can hit these increased targets, and I'm hopeful that this pause from Capital for Change is not very drawn out. But that's to the increase there. Sorry, Commissioner.
Yeah, so Capital for Change, and I was hearing a little couple other things about them outside of this. What is the long-term risk to Green Bank's affairs if things don't improve for Capital for Change?
So we're already looking, we'd already started looking at how do we need to grow the program. And that was part of the GGRF money that we expect to receive, which is we want other lenders that are going to continue to do this lending. And we want lenders that are excited about it. Not that the ones that we have today aren't, but there's clearly more that we can do. When we got this round of lenders in, our goal was, hey, let's get 100% geographic coverage of the state. So everybody has an option of 2 lenders. So we had Capital for Change was doing predominantly low income and focus, but could do lending statewide. And then there were other regional lenders that were covering portions of the state. So Capital for Change leaving is a little bit of a blow to that strategy, but our goal was always to have more lenders. We got a little complacent. So we started looking, I'd say kind of towards the end of last summer, of how could we grow that. So yeah. we kind of, to answer your question, we paused that a little bit because we don't want to go and get people in a high interest rate environment where they may not be excited to do more lending before we have something to entice them in, which is the GGRF money. So once we get that, we're going to look to grow the lenders. Right now, we're looking much more, and we've been working with, I'm blanking on the name of the group, it's effectively the League of Credit Unions in the state, and the former chief of staff for the banking commissioner is the executive director. Brian and Bert have been working very closely with him. He's very supportive. Right now, we're looking much more targeted of who we can get in and how we can make sure that we have at least a dual choice for people statewide, and maintain that. So I think we have that, or pretty close to that. Some of our other lenders are showing some interest in stepping up. So, hey.
So then one question. So one follow-up, Eric. And again, I don't, sorry, only because I feel like this is definitely strategic and important. That's why I'm harping on it. But what is our typical onboarding for a regional lender? How long does it take? A 3 to 6 month process to vet and onboard them? The legal, the negotiations, contracting. Like, can you guys, give us any insight on how long it takes to get them in their portfolio, get them onboarded and ready to go?
We can be pretty quick. We have fairly standard templates that we have some points we can give and take on. We're pushing for uniformity, and so it's a little bit of a balance. So in the past, we've been generally closer to the 3 month line. Surely it could take longer, but our goal is to be quicker. Kind of getting back to the point that from a second ago, there's some strategic upgrades, let's say, we want to make to the program that we're also trying to navigate. So things that would allow for us to leverage technology that would offer instant pre-approval for customers, or a standardized application across as many lenders as possible, that we're looking to figure out how do we also implement at the same time. So to say, hey, yeah, we could get a new lender on in 3 months. Yeah, we could. We could probably do it much quicker than that. And our intent in the short term is to do it more quickly, but we're also trying to balance the other pieces as well and kind of get the program to the next level. And that the drive to do that is really coming from contractor feedback. That we hear a lot from home improvement HVAC contractors that, hey, we don't have enough insight into where the customer application is with the lender. Hey, wouldn't it be great to get the customer to go ahead and apply while we're sitting at the table? One of the other pieces of feedback that we hear from especially from the solar installers is dealer fees that they're paying for their existing financing options are running upwards of 30, almost up to 40% of project cost. So the idea that we could come in with something that would be cheaper, that, yeah, the contractors would still have to pay a fee for, but we could decrease the cost to the consumer by 20%. I mean, that's meaningful in terms of increasing deployment. So that's really where we're looking for solutions here.
Understood. Understood. Okay, just to bookend so we could continue, and apologies to everybody, but I just felt like this is an important point to jump on. So then, Eric, team, is it fair then to say that with Capital for Change coming out of the regional lender portfolio, we will be replacing them with 1 to 2 to 3 additional regional lenders? And strategically, there's two-part. One is we're looking for GGRF to make it more advantageous in terms of incentive and the margins. That's 1. 2, it looks like you're trying to implement some improvements to process and technology to further make this better, not just for our regional lenders, but also for their customers. So that would, and then 3 months is the average, but it could be worse, it could be less. So there is a variance there. So is that a fair bookend to what you're presenting?
Very fair.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you so much. No further questions on this from me.
So to summarize, Smarty, lots of change. We're expecting to, or our goal is to increase the numbers. And just as a reminder, we do have the first round of Smarty new measures for resilience that have gone live. They were the energy adjacent measures. They went live this month. We have the next round of new measures that should start to go live around Earth Day. It'll be a little bit of a trickle effect as we bring on new contractors and we get comfortable with what we're supposed to be looking at on all of those. But we've set the sub goal very low on that. So ideally we'll get 20 loans that are associated with the new measures this year. But should be growing the program overall. On energy storage solutions, that's where we're cutting targets, and that's offsetting this growth. So just on the residential side, we're scaling this back based off of where we've seen uptake. And I mean, I still think that our goal is a little bit of a stretch that's in there. So we're really pushing staff to get to that, but the market is very slow for storage. And that is driven 99% by battery economics. So when I get back to my Smarty point on, hey, we could really reduce project cost if we can cut dealer fees, that would ideally impact some of the storage uptake as well. On the C&I side, that's a slight decrease. My memo was off, I apologize. But it is a slight decrease that we're forecasting there, and that has to do with the PURA ruling. And PURA basically has said that after this block of commercial incentive is out, they're going to pause and relook at the commercial incentives. So this is what we really see is kind of in the hopper to review that would take up the rest of that incentive block, which we expect to run out in, I think the forecast was April or May. So, and that's when PURA was looking for their pause and to really look at the commercial incentives for the program. So we're in line with them. Any questions on energy storage or incentive programs in general?
None from me.
Okay. So moving on to the budget portion. So let me just pull up my accompanying memo so that I can walk through this. All right, so in terms of revenues, we have a $71,000 change here. And that's just bringing the utility customer receipts from Eversource and UI in line. So it's actually higher than we had expected. So that's overall a good thing. In terms of expenses, let me walk through these. So I'll start on the financing programs. So we're proposing an additional $618,000 of expenses. The big driver here is an additional $288,000 to create 4 new positions supported by the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. These are all contingent upon us winning money. If we don't win, we're not going to hire. We can start to cost recover from the awards in March once we've been noticed. So our intent is to start posting for those positions, or at least one position, probably sometime in February, so that we can bring somebody on board. I think our existing staff is tiring of some of the minutia, in addition to their day jobs of helping the various applications with their questions, helping those move through the process. So yeah, 4 positions. Aside from the associate director position that's in there, the other 3 are kind of placeholders and really will depend on which competitions we win in and how our strategy unfolds there. We landed on the number 4 because that's just basically what we think we can get on board between now and the end of the year. I mentioned that because I would expect us to continue to add positions with next year's full year budget. So I just don't want you to be caught off guard with that. This isn't a one time and I'm gone. Other additional expenses that we're looking for here is an additional $50K in marketing for dues to support the Coalition for Green Capital. As you recall, CGC is one of the 2 big applications we're a part of for the GGRF. This $50,000 is our contribution, our annual dues to support them and help them continue stewarding this part of the application process. And in other words, this should pay for itself. Additionally, there's a $100,000 increase in research and development to support a battery and solar end-of-life study and to support work associated with the Bridgeport Communities Leap. That's the community benefits agreements and the work that Adrian's really been leading in Bridgeport. Also, there's an additional $180,000 for consulting related to our EV carbon credit project, as well as guidance from a tax accountant that will hopefully lead to digestible advice that we can provide to homeowners around the tax credits that are coming out of the GGRF. And on the 180K, or I'm sorry, the portion of this that's EV carbon credit related, we should make that money back either the end of this fiscal year or early next fiscal year as we are bringing credits to market. We're just waiting on the registry.
Okay. Eric, I have a question on the R&D piece for the recycling survey. So I guess just thinking about, only because again at DECD we're looking at parallel efforts there, and I'm wondering how we can align state resources here. But the outcome of that, what is the ETA on that report being concluded, and also who will be the audience to receive it?
So I think this is all work done in conjunction with DEEP, and this is really about like battery and panel end of life. So in terms of who the audience should be, I mean, it's really us and Deep, but it's more of advice on what we should be planning for as assets age. Yeah, I'm happy to, in terms of timeline, I think it's by the end of this fiscal year, but
Okay.
I can check on that firm. And I'm happy to coordinate with you guys in any way, shape, and form on that.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I know that Wes Bemis on my team works closely with Sarah at the Green Bank. So only because the economics. So I've had conversations with Commissioner Boughton. I've had conversations with Dan O'Keefe. But so what we're looking at, the point is, in fact, I just spoke with Commissioner O'Keefe earlier today about some of our strategies here in clean energy and clean economy. The point is, Connecticut could be well positioned to be a clean energy supply chain and manufacturing state. So the question I have is, it's not just we want, and I get Deep and Green Bank working together. That's why I asked about the audience. Over at DCD, we're looking at the economics of it. Is there ability to take this and say, hey, companies out there, startups, you name it, or existing companies, there is a revenue model here in order to, say, create a recycling a supply chain or initiative around it in order to get not just the clean environment, clean economy piece of it, but just the economics, businesses, jobs. You know, that you can imagine. That's really what I'm driving here.
I love where your head's at, and I'm so far from this. I'm not going to get over my skis and say anything, but I would say that we should look at it. That said, I see Lee has her hand up, and Lee would be much more the authority on this. So,
Okay.
It's a wonderful question. I'm really happy to hear how this connects to some other things. Sarah is running point on this, as you can imagine, and she's actually at a conference this week with some industry personnel. I got a message that she was surprised that there wasn't more conversation about end of life at the conference. So just a little bit on timeline. This relates to the expanded authority to Green Bank as per our new foray into environmental infrastructure. We haven't had the chance to meet yet, Lee Welpton, the new Director of Environmental Infrastructure Programs. So this is one of our 3 pillars of strategy for our expansion into waste and recycling. A fair bit of our work the year ahead is exactly like this, looking into strategy formation, potential, kind of ways that we can engage meaningfully. One of those areas being collective responsibility for solar, residential, non-residential, and solar and battery storage, recycling opportunities. So just to say a yes and by the rules of improv to your great points there, we're on it, we're looking into it. And this, in terms of timeline, is a big part of our waste and recycling primer that will be delivered to the board by the end of the calendar year.
Okay. Thanks so much, Leah. Nice to meet you. So I look
Wonderful
forward
to meet you.
to reviewing that when it's out. Okay. Thank you. That was my main question about the budget. I think I'm good with everything else. I'll leave it to John or Chairman Reed if they, Chair Reed, if they have any questions.
all right, let me walk you through the other items on here. So, on the incentive program side, we're proposing an additional $87,000 of expenses. Of this, $37,000 and change is for an additional position to help with additional volume on Smarty as we implement new measures, but also to help as we implement new technology. We're really, if you look at across all of our greenhouse gas reduction fund applications, Smarty features in all 3 competitions as a way to reach homeowners, and we're really expecting to see growth here. We clearly want to see growth in the program without huge growth in terms of the resources needed to run it. So I mentioned earlier our desire to implement instant pre-approval and better application tracking, which are coming from contractors in their feedback of what they say would help them. one of the things that's unique to our Smarty and how we've built this program is the technical approval that our team does. And they really review the contractors, they review the contract between the contractor and the homeowner to make sure that, hey, there is a contract covering the measures that are what the contractor's saying that they're going to do. So, hey, the contractor has said in our loan management software that the loans for 2-box heat pumps, that's what's in the contract, and so on and so forth. That's really great. Our lenders really like that we're doing that type of technical review because they're getting the assurance that this is money's going for what it should be. The problem is that's manual. So want to look at employing a machine learning language model that can compare what's being identified in our workflow tool to what's in the contract. So we're looking to figure out how do we do that, and that should really tee the program up to scale and grow. And so that's one of the things that we'd have this person look at. We'd have them really focus on the growth of the new measures. It would also provide some redundancy that we just don't have fully at the moment. We don't have the Smarty knowledge in-house because we've outsourced all the processing to IPC. And as we continue to grow and they continue to grow, as we expect that we will with Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund money going, I want to make sure that we have some of that knowledge in-house, if not just what's in my head and a couple other people's head from an oversight perspective, but people who are more familiar with the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, Eric, on that point, how do we maintain that balance of not outsourcing some core competency? It's always the balance, right? I mean, you can't just have an ongoing resource who may not be fully utilized, but then on the flip side, you can't outsource all of the intelligence to a consulting firm. What are you looking at in terms of just maintaining that going forward, through the next fiscal year?
It's something to keep in mind. And it's one of the reasons that we're adding this position is making sure that we have that skill set in-house. Having been in offshore, involved in outsourcing and moving jobs around the world in previous incarnations of my career, this is something that always comes up, and striking that balance is something that I've always found needs adjusting, that everything's working until all of a sudden it isn't. And, you got to take that into account. I mean, I think the decision to move the management of Smarty to IPC was 100% the right one, and they've done a great job doing that. I think where I took on oversight of this about a year ago, 18 months ago, and my goal has been, this is a program that's really poised to grow. If we want it to grow, we need to understand the detail so that we understand our local market. IPC has really become an enabler of Smarty and Smarty-like programs across the country, and that's their skill set. We need to know our market, and we know our market. But we need to also kind of know what they do so we can translate between the two and make things run as efficiently as possible. So having somebody in-house who can work alongside what's being done by IPC would allow us to do that and allow us to make sure that we are efficiently managing this as well as possible.
Okay. All right. That makes a lot of sense. All right. Thank you.
The other budget line item in here is $50,000 to support automation for the engine tool, which is the workflow tool for Smarty. And this is really getting back to that AI language model that I was speaking about earlier. And finally, on the incentive programs, we're looking to adjust the incentives that we expect to pay downward by 1.3 million. And this directly goes back to the slow uptake of storage on energy storage solutions. So, and then finally moving on to environmental infrastructure, we're proposing to increase the budget by 222,000 that would support 2 new positions. So one would be at the associate director level and one would be at the associate level. And these positions are really there to help us with program implementation and to really facilitate a lot of the work that Lee is doing and start to get programs out in the field. I think we've talked about a lot of priorities there, but I think these would be key to getting some stuff up and running. Questions or concerns? The next item, and I didn't do a slide for it, but I'd like to just talk through it, is around a change to our salary bands. That we've been including our salary bands that we adjust every year with the budget as part of that process. And I'm not adjusting the overall amounts on any of the bands that they're keeping their mins and max. We are adding a new band, and that's really coming to us based off of some advice we got from an HR consultant that we use for a lot of things, and a desire to differentiate between just our officers and our executive vice presidents. This also will allow us to have all staff be within bands that they aren't above the max of, that we have, I'm sorry, not all staff, but it would adjust for some staff who have gone over the max of their bands, which is desirable.
So Eric, on that point, there's no slide about it, and fundamentally, it sounds like what you're saying is that there's some folks within a band who's gone above. So in order to correct that across the spectrum of bands, insert a new band in order to bring that back in alignment. Is that part of the motion here? I just want to make sure.
It is part of the motion to recommend that to the board. So it is just creating this one new level in our structure.
But there's no documentation on
There was
the numbers.
Stuff here. I can share it right now. It was in the mailing. If you can see my screen.
Yeah, one sec. I got to put on my big screen here and zoom in. There we go. Okay. And the new band is inserted at what, 21, 22, or 19? One of those up there?
It's 21.
21, got it. Okay.
And that was.
Right. Okay.
Any questions on that?
Just a comment. I told Eric before, I looked at the list online of the 100 highest paid state employees, and none of the Green Bank people showed up on that list of 100. They're all mainly doctors and then the coaches. So so we're below that radar level, which is a good thing.
Right. That's a good point, John. I mean, we're doing a lot of great work. So fundamentally, what we're saying as part of this motion is this committee would recommend to the wider, the board itself to consider the addition of this band. So I think I'm comfortable going forth with that motion included to go in front of the board itself. So, okay, no, that's fair. Thank you for sharing this, Eric.
Thanks. And just give me a second to switch back to the deck. All right. What did I take back there? All right. So the final thing that I want to highlight here for you guys, because it's part of the resolution, is just the 2 tweaks to our strategic partners. And just a refresher, our strategic partners are those that have not to exceed amounts that are above our typical staff threshold that we would typically need to go to Chair Reed for approval, but we like to run as many of those through the BONC committee for their buy-in with. Basically, we're updating 2 not to exceed amounts for 2 of our partners, one for CTEC Solar and one for Strategic Environmental Associates. And that's CTEC Solar is driven by a lot of the meter repair that we've been doing, and some of the asset management work that needs to be done for Solar Release 2 and Solar Release 3, especially where we had Trina panels that were underperforming. So we expect that the Trina panels is a much longer conversation, but these are ultimately expenses that we're going to need to make, and we have conducted RFPs for the work that's being done by CTEC. We've also done an RFP for the work that's done by Strategic Environmental Associates, who are our carbon markets consultant, and this is related to the EV carbon credits that I mentioned as an additional expense previously. So, any questions on the budget side of things, HR side of things, or strategic partner side of things?
No, that makes sense for me. Okay.
All right. With that, I think that gets us to our resolution. Do I have a motion for the resolution?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay. So there's a motion made and seconded to adopt resolution number 2 under discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of resolution number 2 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? So the motion passes, and so this means that when the board meets, I think it's the 25th, or whenever it is, that they will receive a recommendation from us to approve the budget. So that's a good thing. Do we have other business before us, Eric?
That's all that I had on my list. If there's other items you guys would like to discuss, happy to talk about them.
Any of the committee members have anything for the general welfare? Hearing none.
None for me.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, moved and seconded. I'll take it.
I second.
All right.
We're fighting for it, John. We're fighting for it.
Right. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay. Thank you very much. And Eric, thank you for
Yes, thank you, Eric.
your
Thank you.
presentation and making something as interesting as possible when it was sort of like a saw sawing through a log.
Oh, man.
All right, take
Thank you,
care,
John.
everybody.
Bye. Take it
We'll
easy.
see you.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Madam Chair.